name is Tendai Maniko, and this is Real Talk. Now, in January this year, we all witnessed a mass exodus out of the MDC as the new party, Citizens Coalition for Change (CCC), was formed. The party, led by former MDC Alliance leader Advocate Nelson Chamisa, has taken on a mandate to form a program called the Electoral in an effort to streamline the inconsistencies that have been observed during elections. Currently without any representation in Parliament, after massive recalls of the MDC Alliance MPs, this seems to be the strongest link the CCC has to stand by. The party has been well received across the country, and there is a lot of excitement surrounding the new kid on the block, but there are concerns about issues of trust. 2 out of the 3 leaders of the party have run for office and lost, so the question of their competences continues to hang over. The people of Zimbabwe have very little to go by when it comes to understanding the party, as it is only approximately 6 weeks old. It is on this background that we have invited the Citizens Coalition for Change, represented here today by the interim deputy spokesperson, Comrade Ostallos Siziba, on this episode of Electoral. Now for a brief background of our guest. Comrade Ostallos is the former Secretary General of the MDC Alliance Youth Assembly. He is a former president of the University of Zimbabwe Students' Union, an activist and human rights defender. He graduated with an honors degree in political science and a master in international relations from the University of Zimbabwe. He holds a postgrad certificate in leading non-violent movements for social change from Harvard University. He was part of the #Generation Consensus movement, which played a crucial role in the 2008 presidential campaign for Nelson Chamisa. Lastly, Gift is a Democrat who believes in the values of constitutionalism, democracy, human rights, and people-centered development. Welcome, Comrade Ostallos. Thank you for joining us on today's show. Ostallos, you see, we cannot ignore the fact that the CCC came from MDC, right? And during your time in the MDC, there were many squabbles dating way back in 2008. How can the people of Zimbabwe take you seriously, and how can we not see you as another offshoot of MDC? What are you going to do differently?
Thank you very much. I think let me start by correcting facts as they are. Number one, we are not born out of the MDC. The MDC in its various forms and facets is part of our past. We are born out of a massive rural-urban consultation that we did as leaders of community with the people of Zimbabwe to establish a new political organization to take Zimbabwe forward. So we are not born out of, we are born out of a robust community conversation that the people of Zimbabwe said we must have a new alternative movement, which that's why our movement is called Citizens Coalition for Change. It's a coalition of ordinary people. It's a coalition of Zimbabweans, ordinary Zimbabweans who have come together and said, Advocate Nelson Chamisa, we give you the political, moral, and ideological responsibility to form a political organization in Zimbabwe, which must form the next government. The MDC is part of our past in our individual capacity.
Okay.
Yes.
So as we go forward, are you asking us to disregard the past?
We are not disregarding our past because there is no people without a past. Yes. There is no society without a history. That's why we recognize the history of this country. That's why we recognize the liberation. In actual fact, we are advancing our history. We are advancing the history of the liberation struggle. Because at the center of the liberation struggle were 2 things. The sacrosanctity of the vote. Number 2, the land question. That's why at the center of the citizens movement, we are advancing that cause. But the liberation struggle was about 1 man, 1 vote. It was about bringing liberation to the people of Zimbabwe. And that agenda was achieved. The second phase of the liberation struggle is to then attain economic independence, which is the economic liberation of ordinary people and upliftment of ordinary people. So we are actually right afoot with deep connection of that particular past. So we can't write off our past, we can't write off Zimbabwe's past because we are advancing that particular history.
Okay, you're advancing that history, right? But then there were a lot of discrepancies in your past. What are you going to do differently now as the CCC that you did not do in the MDC? What sets you apart from your past, and why are you now a new creature, so to speak?
I think that's a very important question. There are certain things that we are not prepared to do now in the new political organization. Number one issues to do with values. Number 2, issues to do with our work ethic. Number 3, issues to do with our principles. Number 4, issues to do with our program of action. Number 5, issues to do with the leadership culture. One of the most important things that we advance in the Citizens Coalition is a change, a radical shift in leadership culture, because we believe that part of the fundamental problems in this country, in the entire party politic, is about culture. The ability to serve people, the element of servant leadership, the element of thought leadership and ideological clarity. So you can't find that in the past, you can't find that in the current ruling establishment, you can only find it in the citizens movement.
All right, so you're saying your value system has changed. You
Precisely.
have shifted that.
Precisely.
All right. You have gone through great pains to highlight, the inconsistencies in the electoral system previously and currently, and that's great. Really recommend the CCC. But during your campaigns, you've also made numerous promises without really sharing your game plan. And now what the people of Zimbabwe want to know is, how do you intend to fund your promises? For example, in the rally in Highfield, Advocate Chamisa said that he's going to make sure that teachers are paid well, teachers are going to be paid as much as they were getting when President Mugabe was still in power. How do you plan to fund that promise?
Thank you very much. Look, one of the things that we have presented and we're going to then launch, in our launch we're going to unleash our economic blueprint, which articulates succinctly our program of action. And one of it has been highlighted by the Chairman-in-Chief, Advocate Nelson Chamisa, that one, we intend to restore the dignity of the working class in this country. The first thing we have to do is to make sure that every worker in Zimbabwe gets a salary above the poverty line. And that is possible how? Look, it's about priority finding. We have to make sure there is vast mineral resources in this country. We propose a creation of $100 billion economy in 10 years. What does it mean? It means that there will be macroeconomic stability. It means that we are not in war. We will not be able to prioritize some of the things that the current regime is prioritizing. Why prioritizing buying tanks, water cannons, shambox? We are not in war. The government can't be in war with its citizens. So we must be able to prioritize health. We must be able to prioritize education. And that is possible. And our blueprint is there. Anyone can mark it to make sure that they see how are we going to make sure that we fund a primary education for free up to secondary level. It's about prioritizing key social and economic rights of ordinary people in this country. And our blueprint also goes beyond that and talks about development of rural areas. But that is possible. In a modern Zimbabwe, we can't be talking about road networks. We can't be talking about drilling boreholes in urban cities. We can't be talking about those archaic bakeries that the regime is presenting to ordinary people. That is the 17th century stuff. We must be talking about proper development. We must be talking about spaghetti rolls. That is possible. Why? Because we must be able to attract proper investment in this country. But we have a local agenda that if we deal with corruption, look at the problem of illicit financial flows in this country. If that money is channeled through the treasury, in actual fact, the current problem we have is that the RBZ is used as a clerk's office to actually facilitate corruption and illicit financial flow in this country. So once you make sure that we have a proper central bank, once you make sure that you deal with corruption in this country, there is no one in government that must be able to drive the cars, the kind of cars that we see from government officials. But those are public servants. Where are they getting that money? That money is in the private sector. So the issue is about regulating, it's about dealing with impunity, it's about dealing with the exhausted culture of the liberation narrative that is used to abuse state coffers, that is used to abuse ordinary people, that has been used to push corruption in this country.
Okay, can you substantiate your statement about the RBZ being used to do?
Of course, I don't have to substantiate it, I just have to present you the Auditor General's report. Those things are laid bare, those things are there. Have there been action on the recommendation by the Auditor General's report? No. Why? Because the tip at the center of what is exposed by the Auditor General, by the way, it's just a tip on the iceberg of the corruption that happens in this country. And there is no action because the 7 heights of corruption in this country, that includes fuel, that includes minerals, that includes agriculture. You know, the corruption in command agriculture, big money that happens facilitated by the RPZ, and the Minister of Finance is being rewarded. Who doesn't know that Mutulungu is now being rewarded by getting fuel stations for facilitating huge corruption issues in this country? Everyone knows that. And the only thing that government can act is because they're at the center. So who's going to deal with it? You know that the Anti-Corruption Commission has itself been accused of being corrupt. So there is no one, there is no proper vehicle. That's why there is impunity to deal with corruption in this country. And once we deal with leakages in that arena, you know that we are able to fund everything that we propose as an alternative government.
All right. So you're saying this shift in the value system that you're presenting as the CCC is going to correct all this?
It's a fundamental importance in the politics of the CCC. It's where the center of development will be.
I'm happy you talked about the blueprint that you mentioned, because you see, 58% of the Zimbabwean population gets their information on the internet. So they're going on social media, just digitization. You don't even have a website as the CCC. What you have is social media accounts. And when you're doing your rallies, you're streaming live on social media. And you know for a fact that data costs are very expensive for the honest Zimbabwean. All right. Now, how do you intend to get the confidence of the electorate if your digital presence has gaps in it?
Look, let me correct you on that area. The Citizens Coalition for Change is a new political outfit.
We do understand.
What we have done is announce our entry into the political landscape in this country, right? From there, we have a roadmap. That roadmap is the roadmap to the official launch of our alternative movement, which is preparing to govern. And on that launch, and to make matters very clear, we have a website, but everything has got processes. So we're going to make our website public. Why? Because that website must include the portal for people to subscribe, must include membership, a platform for people to join, and that will need bank accounts, and we're creating those, so you can't rush. That's why we're doing a process towards our launch. Our launch will present our platforms, the digital platforms. Number two, will present our documents. Many people are demanding to see our documents, like our blueprints, like our policies, like our values.
People want to understand.
But it's a process. There is no organization that is as big as us, that is just launched overnight. We have to prepare. We have to make sure that our values are embraced by every collective forces that form the Citizens Coalition. Once we do that, we go to the launch. When you get there, you'll be invited because you're a journalist. In the entrance of our launch, which is going to be at the National Sports Stadium, you'll be given a package that includes our policy blueprint, that includes our ideological disposition, which is basically more of the catechism that is going to be conscientized and socialized across the length and breadth of our country. There is no rush in town, but this is a big vehicle. So you don't want to do a premature launch. And we are dealing with a fascist regime that is prepared to extract all these things from us. So issues of timing in such an environment is very important. So once we launch, we answer all these questions very clearly without any ambiguity, so that our people know, the international community know, journalists know what we stand for, our values, our path to power. Everything is going to be clearly defined. Because we have learned once bitten, twice shy. We have learned from the past, so we know. So we're not going to be pressured by the enemy, because we don't work on the details of the enemy, but we work on the details of our political strategy and strategic intervention to answer the national question.
So we've heard Advocate Chamisa say this countless times that Trump, this is factual, right? SANU-PF is on record for defining your party as anti-development. They say you called on sanctions. If you get into power, you will reverse the land reform program. You have no ideological grounding and political maturity, amongst other labels. They have said that.
No.
And you have not clearly spelled out how you define development to squash these labels. All right, what is development to the CCC? The ordinary citizen wants to know: is it spaghetti roads? Is it fancy airports? What is development according to the CCC?
Thank you very much. First, let me educate ZANU-PF. When we are in a political rally. We campaign in poetry and govern in prose. When we're in a rally, the intention is to socialize a message.
Right.
So when you socialize a message, you use gestures, you use metaphors, you use a hyperbole. But ZANU, because it's an archaic political organization who doesn't appreciate literacy skills as a way to deliver a message. When the president, as the champion chief, gave a reference, I would answer it very clearly. It was about investment, that we have a strong social contract, that when we take over political power, one, we're able to attract investors. Number two, we're going to have a strong backbone of people supporting upliftment in the private sector. So that was the socialization of a message about development. ZANU, on the other hand, he said they're going to pursue a private sector-led economy. They've said Zimbabwe is open for business.
Okay.
No one wants to invest in Zimbabwe.
Let me stop you on that. This is not an opportunity to decampaign ZANU-PF.
No, I'm not I'm answering questions.
No, I get
the
it.
The submissions are from ZANU. They're actually abusing our submissions to the ordinary people. The people understood our point. Let me tell you, as a matter of fact, that Zimbabwe under Muturi Ngube says, and I quote, we are going to knock in every door in the Western countries. Are those not white people? Don't you see Chinese all over this country? This country is being sold to the greatest bidder, to the detriment of ordinary people and the agenda for development. On ideology, let me answer this. I was trained by the International Socialist Organization. And I can tell you, I've been to the left, I've been to the center. There is no party in this part of Africa which is ideologically vacuous and ideologically bankrupt than ZANU. ZANU took over the liberation struggle at the behest of Marxist-Leninist ideological persuasion. What is happening now? If Tongobara is going to be woke up, or Josama Kamba and Epet, Chitepo, Joshua Ngome and others, they're going to be shocked because the same ZANU-PF government is giving the land back to white people. We have not promised anything. They're putting hands into our own mouth. What have we said about land? We said the land reform program in this country can't be reversed. That's number one. Number two, we actually say we're advancing the agenda of the liberation struggle, which is the land question. How are we going to do it? Give people title deeds. How are we going to respect every Zimbabwean that is land, but make sure that we introduce smart agriculture so that we're able to transform the agriculture as a backbone of this economy. Under ZANU-PF, what have you seen? They're taking land from black people in Chiamkwakwa village, in Tinde, in Chochido. They're taking land from people in Msikawan. They're actually bidding this country to the Chinese. So who has reversed the land reform program in this country? Do black people have access to land? We've actually said when we take over political authority in this country, the first thing we're going to do is to regulate those who have land, support them economically, so that there is massive economic development in this country.
Okay, so this development, that's what we want to know. What is development?
Development to us, let me answer it very clearly. Development for us is about upliftment of ordinary people. How do you uplift them? Allow me to answer it.
No, allow me to answer what you just said. I need you to.
It's about putting the citizens back at the center. That's the first philosophical belief around development. Why? This is informed by research. Go and read the Afrobarometer report. It actually says that 75% of Zimbabweans think that the government is irresponsible, the government is not answerable to them, and doesn't listen to them. So the first thing as a philosophical underpinning on development is putting the citizens back at the same. How do we put them back at the same? Make sure that policies are made downwards, not upwards. The current problem of executive tyranny is that policies are made at the top. Citizens are not consulted, the workers are not consulted, journalists are not consulted, bankers are not consulted, international players are not consulted. So policies in this country can be implemented, but they have no buy-in from ordinary people. So development for us it starts at philosophical level. Second, once we philosophize that, the second area now is about making sure that we invest in education. Because we have to make sure that education is for free from primary to secondary level. Number two, we have to make sure that the road infrastructure in this country is prioritized. Number three, we have to make sure that the internet connectivity in this country, look at ZESA cables, they're archaic. One of the things we have to do is make sure that our transmission cables, because electricity is important. You can't industrialize without electricity. So we're very clear, we say, let us develop Batoka, let us develop Wange 7 and 8, let us make sure that we participate in the Inga Dam project, because it can generate more than 30,000 megawatts of electricity. Once you do that, you know that you are able to industrialize, because we can industrialize with solars only. You can industrialize with the current electricity problems in Zimbabwe. Even in terms of solar energy, there must be a huge investment in this country. Because we have got one of the longest periods of sun in this country, in the part of Africa. So we have to make sure that we utilize solar energy, not this kind of thing that we see from the regime in Iran. So once we do that, we know that we are developing. We go on the fifth point, development and urbanization of rural areas, what we call rural. That is transforming the rural populace. That is transforming the rural economy. That is making sure that we bring the chief in their own space, we bring the traditional leaders in their own space, and uplift ordinary people. How do you do that? You don't do that by fumbuza. That's archaic. You do that by smart agriculture. Let's put drones. It's possible. These things that we're talking about are things that are scientific, things that we've put on a blueprint. These things are possible. Once you do that, you know that the economy is strong. You know that rural people are uplifted. You know that the urban poor. Look at what's happening in urban areas. Young people, like at my age, are working at the blessing of an empty stomach and a jobless existence. Why? Thanks to 42 years of exhausted nationalist rhetoric without a transformative agenda to change the lives of all.
Ostallos, you're hammering so much on smart agriculture, and that's great. We've heard that. But what's your plan as a CCC, about science and tech? We have so many intelligent people here in Zimbabwe, especially the youth, right? And we're in 2022. Okay, we need to be focusing on science and technology and development in that department. We also have people in the arts industry, the arts sector. That's a forgotten corner of Zimbabwe. What are you doing about development in that? Look at Nollywood, look at people in Nigeria, South Africa. The arts industries are doing very well, and Zimbabwe has the potential to do that. How are you going to develop those industries?
Thank you very much. In fact, by pursuing the fourth industrial revolution, we are actually promoting the arts industry. Why? And I'll tell you why. We are deliberate in promoting local talent, in recognizing local talent. One of the most problems that we've had from our consultation with people who are in that industry is that, one, there is no support from government. Look what happened during COVID. Artists were not supported by government, unlike what was happening in other countries. One of the things that we have to prioritize is promotion of arts and culture in this country. How do we do it? We have to make sure that, first thing, let us provide a platform and space for them. Because what you can't do, you have to provide stations for them to record, studios for them to record, platforms for them to shine, and give them economic support. You can't do that, and the Cast Committee doesn't have a program of action to support musicians in this country. We have said, once we get into government, the first thing we have to do is to bring more TV stations in this country. You can't expect them to go to a ZBC. Their cameras are archaic. They are partisan. They promote toxicity and music that is creative, that even speaks to the comic political environment, is condemned in this country. We must allow freedom of speech. So restoration of rule of law in this country is actually a prerequisite for promoting arts and culture. Because people must be allowed to criticize government. If we do something wrong, people must be able to criticize the government, as will be led by advocate Nelson Champs, through comic scripts and so forth. So we have to make sure that we actually provide for them, because that freedom is important. Can artists sing against the government in this country? Precisely no. Haven't you seen artists in Nigeria protesting against government? Haven't you seen the Black Lives Matter? Who are supporting them? It's the artists. So the freedom of speech, the freedom of assembly, and freedom of association is actually one of the conditions of promoting arts and culture. Secondly, providing them with economic space for them to be supported by government. There has to be a deliberate effort by government to provide technological equipments for them, platforms for them to be able to. But a social welfare state that we intend to create is actually cognizant of that particular sector of Zimbabwean people.
So you're saying the arts sector is a welfare state right now?
No, the welfare state we intend to create caters for every Zimbabwean, regardless of their social background and so forth. So what we are going to make sure is that once we create a welfare state, it means that those who are in school are catered for, those who are the working class are catered for, musicians and artists are catered for, bankers, miners, everyone is catered for. That is the kind of society that we intend to create.
All right, what about science and tech? Let's talk about digitization.
Digitalization
you've spoken about arts. How you're going to develop the arts. Let's move over to science and tech and giving people platforms to do inventions and all that. How are you going to develop that area?
You see, invention is a product of creation of a conducive environment. So what we are doing as a government is to create a conducive environment for those who are in science and tech to thrive. But let me tell you what happens when you start.
What is this conducive environment?
It's about the restoration of rural law. It's about making sure the economy is stable. It's about that creation of $100 billion economy. Because once you do that, it means someone can come with the innovation and the responsible ministers can be able to support that. In the present environment, you can't do that. There is no innovation. There is no capacity to support that level of innovation. So what we are doing, our job as a government is to create a conducive economic, to answer you precisely, creation of a conducive economic environment so that science and technology can be able to thrive in our motherland.
All right. 3 things define an average Zimbabwean daily life, like the reality daily. All right. Inequality, extreme poverty, and unemployment. I'm sure you can agree with
Yes.
that. Okay. Before you give them spaghetti roads and all these things that you're promising, all right, can you just tell us 5 things? How are you going to transform the day-to-day life, the lived reality? Nothing fancy, just day-to-day stuff. Look, because right now, people just want to survive. Everyone is living by the dollar. How are you going to change the day-to-day life of the odd Zimbabwean?
Look, I know that ZANU-PF has deprived Zimbabwean and maybe you the ability to dream. The economy has collapsed to the level and extent that you think that having a spaghetti road is an impossible thing. Cross over to South Africa. You see things that we are talking about.
No, we've seen them, but we're not
I'll answer you, but I wanted you to understand that don't allow ZANU-PF to abuse you to the level and extent that it disrupts your ability to imagine
given them
a
that permission, but we're just
what
saying,
are we going to do?
after we've dreamt about the
what are we
spaghetti,
what are we going to do?
Okay, let me finish. After we finish dreaming, and it's supper time, and it's breakfast time, what is the CCC promising day to day?
It has to start from a vision.
It has to start from
You
a vision, and then we break it down.
What are we going to do?
Yes.
On the 1st of August, 2023, when we get into government, the first thing we are going to do is to dollarize the economy and recognize the US dollar as the official currency. So what does it mean? It means that teachers in September 2023 are going to get their salary in US dollars. It means that soldiers in September 2023 are going to get their salaries in US dollars. Members of the Central Intelligence Organization, ordinary people are going to be able to get their salary in US dollars. So we're going to make sure that we dollarize the economy. Second thing, what we're going to do immediately after getting into government is to make sure that we scrape the bond note. It was caught in flagrante delicto. It's like a wife who has been caught cheating or a husband caught cheating. It was caught red-handed. People don't trust the Zimbabwean dollar. So the first thing we do is to ban it from existence. There's no country that is dollarized that can re-dollarize. So we're going to remove that. Number 3, what we're going to do, the first thing we're going to do when we get to government is to make sure that every Zimbabwean gets a salary above the poverty line. Why? That is important so that our economy stabilizes. We're going to make sure that we talk to the necessary partners. We did it during the government of national unity to make sure that on September 2023, we revise the salary back above the poverty line, because it is important so that when people have confidence, the economy is able to thrive. Number 4, what we're going to do is to make sure that we prioritize health, education, and construction of roads. That is important. This country is terrible. We were in Cholocho just a few days ago. It's terrible to drive there. You can't imagine that after independence, these are the kinds of roads that we have. We have to make sure that we do that. Number 5 is to make sure that we deal with corruption. How are we going to deal with impunity and increase the cost of being corrupt in this country? Those who took money from government must be able to pay back, but we're obviously going to give people a period to pay back to government. It happened in Zambia. Once we do that, we know that most of money is being channeled back. And we make sure that we regularize even extraction of minerals in this country, so there's stability in the economy. And we deal with the debt question in this country. That's an important thing. We have to immediately deal with the debt question in this country. But it's an important issue that future generations must not be able to inherit. So there are a number of issues that we are going to introduce in the economy, in the social arena, and of course in the cultural space in our body politic.
All right, great. We're just going to go back to the beginning of the interview where we talked about your value system and your past when you were in the MDC. All right, and I asked you if we should disregard it, and you said no, it is a part of who you are. It's a part of your story. And now, while you were in MDC, you were responsible for a lot of local governments, right? The Chitungwiza, the BCC, just to name a few, and they were very corrupt. All the reports are there in the Auditor General's report. You know, the land barons, the sewer system is just shocking. It's actually a health hazard. The cholera cases in Chitungwiza, All these things happened while you were in power in the MDC, right?
No.
In local government.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll help you. I'll help you on that with facts.
All right.
So
How are you going to perform differently now that you're not part of it? You said clearly that you are not identified as MDC.
Yeah.
You are now the CCC, but it's the same people.
No, let me correct you from
Just answer the question.
Let's state facts. Number one, what the Auditor General's report was revealing about corruption in country does not point to any of our leadership. It points to ZANU-PF. Why? Because they themselves refuse to have an executive mayor. What we have currently is a ceremonial mayor. The Athens Council Act, what does it say? It gives the minister the power to run the council on day-to-day basis.
So are you saying the land barons
were
as a result of them not
precisely?
being
Let me tell you, the greatest land baron in this country, the greatest land baron in this country is a member of ZANU-PF.
We are not talking about him. We are talking about the land barons that were in the MDC.
No, land barons are actually ZANU-PF people. Haven't you seen July Moyo being implicated on land in this country? Haven't you seen the name of the first lady coming out
in the MDC?
They are actually abusing
in the MDC. There were none. Are you saying
the issue of land is supposed ZANU-PF is there? Let's get facts.
Are there none of them that was in
Let
the
us
MDC?
get facts.
That's
Let
what I'm
us
asking.
get facts.
My question
the greatest land is arrested. He's actually in arrest.
So the answer is yes.
He's a member of ZANU-PF.
So
the minister is actually given power by the Athens Councils Act to run council on day-to-day basis. Let's go to the facts on the ground. Number two, ZANU-PF wants to strike moral equivalence between our alternative and themselves. We're not going to accept that because it's not facts. It's actually absurd. And I say this because the Minister of Local Government has been cited in various cases. In fact, when you want to buy tissue in council, the minister has to approve. When you want to buy bottled water, the minister has to approve. Haven't you seen them approving deals right now in the current setup? Haven't you seen them approving a deal by Mnangagwa Sons? Haven't you seen it? Is there the alternative government there? They said we condemn corruption regardless of those who commit it.
Are you absolving everyone who was in the MDC alliance of any corruption local government?
There is no political party in this country that can be compared to ZANU on the level of corruption.
We are not doing a comparison. The question
there is no political organization. Even
The question is, while you were in the MDC alliance, before you transferred to CCC, are you saying at local government level you did not have
we set a panel
corruption?
We set a panel to
yes
investigate.
Or no? Did you or did you not?
No, there is no proof. There is no proof.
Because
we investigated.
Hasn't said anything.
No, let me tell you, we investigated allegations of corruption.
And we haven't heard anything from Mr. Mbu.
Nothing was proven. Nothing was proven.
So let him say there's no proof.
That's
we
what you
have not
request.
heard the request.
That's what you must request.
But now
you
my question is,
our panel, integrity panel, right? To say, give us a report. That's what you must do. You must not say because there is no report, it means our councillors are corrupt.
That's not what I'm saying.
Because there is no report, it means that there is a moral equivalence between ZANU and the alternative.
We are not.
You know of the 15 billion that was stolen
asked you
from this
a yes or no question. You still haven't answered it. Are you saying when you were still in the MDC alliance, right?
Yes.
And the people that you transferred with, are you saying there was no corruption at local government level? Yes or no?
By our councillors or ZANU-PF?
Your councillors were not.
No, corruption.
So there was no.
There's proof beyond
your
doubt.
answer is no.
My answer is no.
Your answer is your councillors were not party to, even if they were conniving with the ZANU.
Do you know what was happening? Do you know what was happening? Let me answer you, unless you've got a preconceived views. Let me give you the facts as they are. What will ZANU do? ZANU has got the executive authority to run council. So what they will do, they will look for what I will call a vote fast. A vote fast is an area where bureaucratic red tape can be abused to point on a certain individual as an individual who is responsible for the corruption. While this, at the end of the day, is the technocrats in council, because who's the accounting officer in council is the town clerk. Who appoints the town clerk is the minister. So who's responsible is the Minister of Local Government. So but they will find vote line on our council that they finger point on councillors. But some of them were inexperienced. Some of them will fall for a trinket on bureaucratic procedures.
Oh, they fall for trinkets. They fall for trinkets. That means the ZANU-PF had someone to work with in the MDC.
No, there is someone to abuse.
They fall.
On someone to abuse.
But if your party was based on integrity,
no one received anything from ZANU-PF.
No, but I'm saying the value system of the MDC, if you had a value system, the integrity of the people in local
I'll
government.
make sure that you read the integrity report. So that you disabuse yourself from these allegations. But that's a SFBC ZANU-PF narrative. That's why I become uncomfortable. Because it's a ZANU-PF narrative that they can't substantiate, that is not scientific. I've made clear submissions before you and before the people of Zimbabwe that ZANU is corrupt. I've given you the proof of illicit financial flows. I've given you the of a government institution, the Auditor General's report that points clearly to ZANU-PF as the mother of corruption in this country. That's scientific. It's not casting aspersions. But you remain in a ZANU-PF script that is not proving anything scientific that Comrade Ostallos, a member of the Citizens Coalition, is corrupt.
I don't appreciate your comment that this is a ZANU-PF script.
No, it's a script by ZANU. It's a predominant.
What I'm giving is not a script.
It?
I am asking questions based on observation.
Okay.
Exactly.
I thought you were based on facts.
Yes, let's be clear.
Okay, let's base on facts and science.
Yes.
It becomes easier.
We agree.
Okay.
We agree. Okay, so during your are we okay with this one? I am not entirely satisfied, but we don't want to. All right. So during the rally in Kwekwe, Advocate Chamisa said that the CCC does not have ideologies. He said this with his mouth. All right, and that they're getting ideas from the people of Zimbabwe. And during the rally in Cholochi, remember I was telling you I was in there live.
Yes.
Yeah. He also said that local schools with local resources, local hospitals with local resources. Is it safe then to conclude that the CCC is a socialist party?
Let me answer it very clearly. First thing, the President, Advocate Nelson Chamisa, said the Citizens Coalition for Change, because it's announced its entry into the political landscape. And I'll answer why. Because there were by-elections that were called, right? And were to announce our movement. If it was not for that, we're going to wait for the launch. So what does it mean? When we launch, we release the entire political package that contains in it all our blueprints. I told you about the New Zimbabwe blueprint that articulates clearly our ideological persuasion.
I'm sorry, I might have missed it. When can we expect this?
On the launch. On the day of the launch, we're going to give the entire
you don't have a
package.
date yet?
No, we are going to set the date.
Yes,
we have not set the date. So what we have said is that the ideological persuasion of the CCCCC movement is going to be announced. But what we have done is to release the bits and pieces of our persuasion. So what does it mean? It means that we are definitely not on the right. That is the discourse. If you are someone who's grounded ideologically, will know that we are not shifting definitely to the right. We have got values. Our values include justice, freedom, and solidarity. But we're introducing the philosophical underpinning of putting the citizen back at the center. I've told you about irresponsibility of government. I've told you about inconsistent policies. I've told you about policies that are not pro-poor. I've told you about policies that are not pro-people. So what we are going to do ideological, because an ideology is a set of values. An ideology is about belief system of a collective. So that's why we have not put it out there. Because once we do that, we are putting the cart before the horse. So we have to wait for the launch. For the launch, we have all the social forces that constitute the citizen. So once those are there, they will agree with the leadership collective on the submissions of ideological persuasion. So an ideology for us is a forethought and an afterthought.
Okay. So you're saying you're not going to tell us if you're a socialist party, you're going to tell us then.
If I do it now, so there's no reason for us to launch. I would have launched the ideological package of the party right now. So I don't have the political responsibility to announce publicly.
Okay,
because wherever we pitch up, you know that the viewership and listenership includes those who are beyond our borders. But ideological persuasion, and allow me to put that point, informs our foreign policy direction.
Yes, which is why everyone's curious.
It speaks to our international partners. It speaks about our South-to-South cooperation. It speaks about our regional international partners. So that's why we have to be very clear on it. It doesn't mean that, and I have to say, we didn't say we don't have an ideology. We said we are going to make you aware. No, Chamisa said we are going to don't abuse the submissions by my president. We said we are going to announce on our launch. We are not going to give ZANU right now because, as I've said, ZANU is ideologically bankrupt. ZANU has shifted to the right. ZANU pursues an economic legal order of extraction and parasitic politics. So they want us to announce our ideological persuasion so that they can steal from us and masquerade as us, because everything we do, they copy. So we are going to do it in right time to make sure that people know. But I can tell you, don't have doubt in your mind. We were trained about ideological persuasion and values. We know what we stand for. And when the right time, we're going to announce to the entire world about the ideological persuasion and strategic direction and vision.
So can you give us a ballpark of when to expect the launch? Because
before the end of the year.
That's very wide. Give us something to work
I can't go further than that. We'll definitely have our launch before the end of the year.
Right, Ostallos, thank you so much for joining us today. It was very interesting. We'll continue the conversations after the show, but we really appreciate your presence and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.